Welcome back in here to the XRP podcast. My name is Paul Barron. Today is going to be a good one. And we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to a big conversation that has been occurring on X. And as you guys know, I get, first of all the DMs. I get tons and tons of DMs. I try to answer as many as I can. And often you get into the whole point of where the XRP ledger is going in terms of strategy. But one of the, I won't call it conspiracy theory, one of the things that is brought up often is these potential secret government meetings. Now, you look at where Ripple is in the global landscape of finance, and you have to ask the question, how do they get so much access? Well, today we're going to talk about that with Apex Consulting and Jesse, and we'll bring him on here in a second. But first of all, here on this show, the way to get guests on the show, our producers will vet all of our guests. But if you will just DM me the people that you guys think, I usually put up a post occasionally on X that will ask who are the best leaders that we should have on the space. And that is essentially how Apex Consulting came on. So let's just get right into it and bring Jesse. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul. It's just an honor to be on your show. It's really an honor. Wow, thank you so much.
Melissa, I'm looking at your YouTube channel right now, and these are your playlists that you've got up here. You've got a whole slew of them on the unified ledger concept. We'll get into that. Of course, if you guys are not subscribed to Apex Consulting over on YouTube, make sure and do that right now. And help Jesse out there. Let's get into a little bit about today's topic. And one of the things, I've had a chance to kind of peruse some of your videos. I've looked at some of the theories and research that you've been doing. And obviously, one of the biggest questions we have in the community has, I think, is how deep is Ripple into the global governments and the circling central banks that also pretty much prop up these governments? Just first start with your open theory about these potential secret meetings that seem to be occurring.
Yeah, to me, to, it doesn't get deeper. To be to be honest with you, based on my research, my non-biased opinion, it doesn't get deeper. I don't think Ripple can't do what they're doing without having these meetings with central banks and governments. It just doesn't happen. I mean, they're positioning themselves to be the next global reserve currency to provide liquidity for the world, right? Their main product is on-demand liquidity. So it just that doesn't happen. They wouldn't even be able to do 1% of what they're doing, not even 0.001% of what they're doing, in my opinion, if they weren't having these meetings, if this wasn't all planned, if it's yeah, it's definitely doesn't go deeper, in my opinion, the connection and the relationship.
Sure. I mean, for many people that may be watching this podcast for the first time, a lot of what people need to understand is when it comes to Ripple's ecosystem, you have to understand the significance of Ripple in the space. And I think that's something that people overlook is just how big the ecosystem is, but also how big the amount of investor base around the world is and what it really means. And it's I think a lot of people don't really understand just how powerful it is, even if you compare it to what's going on in Bitcoin, Ethereum, the other two major assets outside of XRP. XRP's I won't call it a fan base. It's almost like an institutional investor base that is built off of a decentralized platform. And it's still just as amazing to me how fast and quickly that ecosystem has grown. Now, Jesse, one of the questions I have is when you look at the involvement of Ripple, we'll talk about the potential of taking over a fairly significant amount of Swift's activity in terms of transactions. You guys don't know what Swift does, go out and do a little research on that. But essentially, it's a settlement layer for international payments, usually at scale. And one of the things that, of course, Ripple is designed to do is cross-border payments. All of that involves many of these bank layers in Asia, the EU, around the world. And when you think about the IMF and the BIS and the integration of all of that, Jesse, explain to me where you think Ripple and the XRP ledger is heading.
It's the new internet of value. It's literally gonna compass like so there's many other blockchains that are doing tokenization, but when it comes to moving, an asset, changing asset from one type of asset to the other, this is where the XRP ledger that's built on the Interledger protocol comes into
Mhm.
play, and there is
Yeah.
nothing like it. It's literally it's the internet of value. So right now we have the internet of information, and we're moving into the internet of value. And XRP is going to be that global liquidity layer for anything that's tokenized. Again, I'm not saying that other blockchains are not tokenizing, but when you want to go from one asset to the other when there's no liquidity, XRP is that liquidity layer. It's that bridge token, and this is very powerful. And so it doesn't get bigger. And to me, it's they're taking over Swift completely. It's not going to be a partial takeover. I don't I hate to say this, but I don't think Brad was saying the full truth when he said, you know, we'll take 14% of Swift's business in 5 years. I can't remember the exact quote. That to me is not true whatsoever. They're taking 100%. And
Well, and you have to think about Swift because why would you not flip over to a better, more efficient system? It's like saying, all right, I'm getting ready to adopt a new technology in AI, but I'm only going to deploy 14% of it. I mean, that's crazy. So,
exactly like yeah, it's so
so
obsolete and sorry to cut you off. Go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just want to add, sorry, Paul. I just want to add that to me, based on my research, it's just my opinion. Okay. And sorry, I should add nothing I say is financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor, just for entertainment purposes only. Sorry, I forgot to add that. But in my opinion, Swift was always working with Ripple. Again, my opinion. This whole idea that, you know, it's a battle between Ripple and Swift, I'm not buying it. It's just my opinion. They always knew that Swift was gonna run on Ripple.
Yeah.
And we see a former employee of Swift. He's been with Swift for 20 years. He says, you know, Swift runs through my blood. And then he talks about how great Ripple is and how Swift could run on Ripple. So to me, it's all BS. Swift is definitely connected to Ripple. They're going to use Ripple. And they knew it from the beginning, in my opinion. In my
Yeah. Well, you look okay. So listen, my background, I spent years in my early engineering years with Microsoft. And I got up to a fairly high level in terms of as an executive there. And one thing that many people do not know is that Microsoft and Apple were actually friends. They were actually working together in many cases to develop next generation operating systems that now run the internet. And in many cases, people think that Bill Gates missed the internet. He publicly went out there and said, hey, we're doing this. All of that, I will tell you right now, 25 years later, was misinformation. It was designed to put Microsoft in a position to where they could do acquisitions. And this is something that I think could be a ploy that many of these major companies, we're probably going to see it in the AI space. And I just wonder how much of this is being done by Ripple. When you look at the power that they've had in terms of the recent involvement with Standard Charter, you look at SPI, the integration into most of the European and also the Asian markets, uh, essentially the only market left which now starts to question was the United States. And that, of course, we know is now all behind us, and we're going to be looking at a new kind of a new revolution with blockchain. This is something I'm very excited about. Jesse, talk to me about national security because this is many things people would say. Well, why don't they just reveal this? And I'm like, well, why would you reveal this? Just because of the level of national security. You're actually developing an alternative to the dollar through a digital theme. There is no way that governments are going to let that out before it's ready to completely innovate across. What is your theory around how this could work with the BIS? And then we'll get into Project Dunbar a little bit and how all of this ties together. Go ahead.
wow, big question. I knew I wasn't going to come here and have small questions. um, to me, first of all, I do believe that I prove on my videos 100% that the unified ledger, shared ledger, the FinTernet, regulated liability network, regulated settlement network, these are all terminologies that the BIS uses. To me, it's all the unified ledger. It's all the XRP ledger. And used to be called the Internet of Value. And now the first time they ever mentioned the regulated liability network, they called it the regulated internet of value in a city document. And immediately they stopped mentioning that because they can't call it the internet of value. If they say internet of value, everybody knows it's Ripple
Right.
because Ripple has been screaming on top of the lungs for the last 7 years, we're building the internet of value, we're building the internet of value. So, but the first time the regulated liability network was ever mentioned, regulated internet of value. And there's other documents saying that it could become, and anytime they say could or would or maybe, it's how they
It
speak.
means will. Yeah.
Yeah, they always, if it's conceptual and that's just how they operate, they have their media agencies know how, have to publish stuff and what they can say and not say. But it said that the regulated liability network, which was called the regulated internet value, could become a global real-time gross settlement, global RTGS. And we have documents coming from the Hyperledger Foundation, which is now called the Decentralized Trust, showing how they were going to build the internet of value. And XRP Ledger was the global RTGS, and all the central banks were holding XRP. And it says at the bottom, it says it will become the global RTGS, the XRP Ledger, including with the Interledger protocol,
Mhm.
will be is the XR is the global RTGS and the global liquidity marketplace. So, um, yeah, they can't do that. I guess for many reasons. To be honest, I don't think they necessarily wanted the retail lane. I don't think it was meant for us, but they need for liquidity to get the ball rolling on the exchanges, kind of, and gain that liquidity a bit. But I don't think it was really meant for us in general.
So, well, that's an interesting point, and statement. I think when you look at the amount of regulatory alignment that they've been able to achieve globally, the number of partnerships, that's also been integrated over the past 2 years, just the last 2 years, and then the evolution of what we're seeing around stablecoins right now, which is interesting how RLUSD is slowly and silently becoming very, very influential, and how it's correlated to what's happening in Asia right now, which is, I think, with China and Hong Kong launching an alternative to a stable coin that basically is going to compete with the Western hemisphere. This starts to really play into the future of where Ripple is going and how this could potentially come out. So, what do you think would be next in terms of what has to happen, other than maybe a big regulatory announcement, possibly here in the U.S. that would trickle down into the EU, maybe into Asia? What do you think is the next potential step as we start to see this shift happen?
Well, I don't know. I think it's whenever they're ready. I think this has been planned for many years. I do prove that in my videos, I believe. Um, like I said in my videos, it can't Ripple can't do what they're doing unless this is planned and they're backed up by highest up you can go. And geez, I'm biting my tongue here. Certain things I'm not sure if I should say, but
Go ahead.
um, I I I I don't think the powers that be expected. Obviously, they didn't expect Trump to be elected, and so I don't know how that's going to play a role in escrow. I think the IMF plays a very significant role in how Ripple is positioning itself. But now with the election of with Trump being elected, and I don't know how that's going to play into the original plan.
Do you
But
think that maybe the political landscape has slowed the overall plan down? Or do you think that they've just rerouted the strategy of how they're going to do it?
um, again, just my opinion. Obviously, I wish I was a fly on the wall and knew everything, but I just think like how that maybe escrow was going to be distributed or how they were going to go about it might change a bit because of Trump's election, but
Mm.
it doesn't remove the need for Ripple because they do need that neutral bridge currency that was literally proposed years ago.
Yeah,
If we go back to the Bretton Woods Agreement, they had
yeah.
proposed the US dollar and the Bancor. And technically, after the SDR came years after. And so we still need that neutral bridge currency, um, I believe, because of the Triffin's dilemma that they've been trying to fix. And they've been trying to
Yeah.
fix the global liquidity crisis. Um, and that's where Ripple really comes to play. It's to fix that global liquidity crisis that central banks have been trying to fix for years. where people are losing the confidence in the central banking system. And so XRP is crucial for that. And also the Triffin's dilemma, where it's that when the Bretton Woods 2.0 was originally created, there was an economist by the last name of Triffins. It was Triffins or Triffins, and he said like this is going to cause problems later on because if you have a sovereign currency, a currency that's a government or a nation that's acting as a global reserve currency, it's fine for now. He said at the time, this when Bretton Woods was created, that's the same day the IMF was created, my understanding. He said later on it's going to be problematic because that country that has a global reserve currency is going to have to run deficits, and it's going to cause major problems. So for example, if I'm holding U.S. dollar, and because I borrowed in U.S. dollar because I want to do my global trade, and then the U.S. literally starts printing me like crazy, or
Right.
their dollar becomes stronger than mine, I can never pay that debt. Like it just doesn't work as per my understanding. And so a neutral bridge currency like XRP fixes all these problems. So they do need it regardless. I just don't like the potential power that it's going to give to if it's oh geez, I'm biting my tongue. um they do need it, but I don't know how do I say that? If the IMF gets a majority of the escrow or part of it, I find it too much power.
Mhm.
But again, just my opinion, it's just that escrow is crucial. Like who
Well,
gets that?
you look at yeah, and you look at the timing here, because to your point, from a political standpoint of when Trump came into office the first time, and the timing of what we saw around a lot of economists predicting, the world currency. I've got this is a good example of an old article that was, I think it was 1988, published on this, The Economist, and predicting a world currency. This was by 2018, was the concept. And timing wise, kind of aligns with what you're saying, that the Trump situation possibly threw a wrench into most of what was happening around the world when it came to either a central bank digital currency or possibly some sort of world currency that would be eventually on chain, whether that is going to be through Ripple or others. But its timing is eerily tied to Trump in a big way. The problem, I would say, is that with Trump, you've got some very unique things happening. You've got JD Vance, sale wings. So it's possible that we could have not only JD Vance and a handful of others that would come in as a vice president candidate for him on the next run through that would continue to push this back. So I guess my question is, if in fact we are seeing a transition in the global currency and it's going to be on chain, would we not see a political detour caused by what's happening here in the United States, at least on the Republican Party taking office and possibly taking over the next 16 years of public office in the U.S.?
Yeah, because like to me, based on my research, again, my opinion is like if you look at the Trump administration, their goals, their goals for the US, how they see the world is extremely different, extremely different from the
Yeah.
previous administration, right?
Mhm.
And so XRP was planned before Trump took office. And again, I think all the previous administration before Trump definitely are not thinking and approaching things the way that Trump and his administration are approaching things. So I think this again, that's the reason I said I think this throws kind of a wrench in their whole program as to how this escrow would be distributed and how so how things would play out with the escrow with Ripple. But they still need a neutral bridge currency. That's the bottom line. They do need a neutral currency to fix the
Talk to
gold.
me about talk to me about Project Dunbar, because the correlation on what project first of all, explain what Project Dunbar is, and then let's get into possibly the implications it could have.
Yeah, I forgot to write the countries down that are involved in Project Dunbar. I think it's 4 countries, Hong Kong, bank, I think it's Central Bank of Australia. There's 4 major banks in Project Dunbar. Got also Project mBridge, Project Dunbar, Project mBridge, we've got Project Agora. So these are all projects coming from the BIS, central banks, for all the central banks. And it's the most powerful institution in the world. I mean, I think 99.999% of people don't even have a clue how powerful the BIS is. And these are all projects they have under the Innovation Hub. And in those projects, it describes and a lot of the projects, not everyone, but there's 43 projects in the BIS Innovation Hub. Again, these are projects all over the world. They're building CBDCs all over the world that involve multiple central banks, multiple countries. And there's 43 projects, 19 are concluded, and about 23 are still ongoing. But in many of those projects, they talk about cross-border payment, a common payment platform, and one of the projects, Project Mariana, they say it's a supranational network that does cross-border payments. I mean, come on. There's no other supranational network that does cross-border on-demand liquidity and certain kind of things they describe. There's no other one than Ripple, right? So
But you're talking about, the key banks there, Reserve Bank of Australia, Bank Negra in Malaysia, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and then the South African Reserve Bank. Those are the ones that are involved in this. All of which are, to your point, are starting to develop a common platform for possibly CBDCs. Now that again would need on-chain, and your theory is that that is all tied to Ripple.
well, Ripple has a CB. Yeah, it's all being built on Ripple, in my opinion. My understanding is Ripple is the only blockchain company that has a private CBDC platform, and this is all public.
That's all. Is Takeover 3 Cora?
Well, the R3 Corda, when they say, okay, so as per my research, the R3 Corda settler is the XRP ledger for settlement. This was confirmed, and R3 was given 5 billion XRPs. So it's the same thing, yes, but that's not where I was going with that. So yeah, the R3 Corda, in my opinion, R3 Corda uses the R3 Corda settler, which uses XRP for settlement when you're going cross-border. Okay,
Right.
now R3 is connected to XDC Zinfin as well, but that's more for the tokenization of trade documents, not necessarily for that liquidity layer where you want to go from one asset to another. There's a lot of confusion there. But R3 received 5 billion XRPs from Ripple many years ago, and they had to bring utility to the XRP ledger. You don't just receive 5% of the escrow or 10% of the escrow or 5% of supply for no reason. You have to be bringing something to the table, right? And then there was a lawsuit. It seems that Ripple was not holding, R3 might not have been holding their weight or something. But
Right.
anyway, there was a lawsuit, a dispute. It was settled. SBI Holding settled it because I think they're the biggest shareholder, private shareholder in Ripple, maybe, and a very big shareholder in R3. They helped to settle the lawsuit. We don't know how much R3 is still holding, but definitely, in my opinion, R3 is still holding some XRP, and they received that XRP originally, if I'm correct, at 0.008 of a cent, so less than a penny. And R3 is just massive. R3 is absolutely involved in the majority of the projects out there, central banks and cross-border and tokenization.
Yeah.
R3 is absolutely massive, and to me, they're still holding XRP, in my opinion.
Okay, so all right, I'm following along, but I'm curious because mBridge, those would be, I think, similar initiatives. mBridge, which I've talked with Andy Scheckman about this. His theory was that gold was going to be the underlying asset of mBridge. That, of course, got last minute rug pull of how it was going to be integrated. We've had him on our show. If you guys want to go check that video out, Andy Scheckman, one of the biggest gold analysts out there. And then you have Project Jura, which is France and Switzerland, both of which are focusing all on these cross-border, obviously that one being more European under descent. But I guess that's my theory, is that if you've got Dunbar and the initiatives of those banks, you've got things happening within the mBridge component, which is Hong Kong, China, Thailand, I think UAE. And then you've got tying in from that, you've got Project Jura, which is now we get in France and Switzerland, which is really where most of the money is being held. And how does your belief is that all these projects have an underlying structure, which is all setting within the XRP ledger?
Yeah, so because Ripple has a private CBDC platform, it's according to James Wallace, which is the head of central bank relations or something like that with Ripple, he describes it. Shout out Thinking Crypto because he interviewed him. I think it was Thinking Crypto, and in that show, James Wallace describes the CBDC platform. So he says, it's a carbon copy. It's a carbon copy clone.
I remember this interview. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a private copy. It's a private. It's a copy of the XRP ledger, the public XRP ledger, but it's a private. So it's a private CBDC platform that central banks all over the world can launch their CBDCs on. And they announced this in 2021, which 4 years ago. 4 years ago,
Right.
sorry. And obviously, to me, if they announced in 2021, they've had it probably a few years before, if not
Mhm.
many years before. But anyways, again, that's not fact. It's just my own opinion, right? But so yeah, so they have a CBDC platform that central banks can easily launch. I mean, honestly, they can probably launch a CBDC easier than can make myself a bowl of cereal in the morning. Like, I'm just kidding. It's not that easy, but they do have a CBDC platform that specializes in launching CBDCs, and they had it for. And my understanding, Ripple's the only company that has that. I don't think XLM Stellar has that. As for my opinion, my understanding.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is the key I think that a lot of people are still looking at. Even though Stellar has been involved in some of these kinds of early initiatives, at least on test nets where they're starting to deploy on cross border. Here's one of the things that I think people should pay attention to. We did a video on this week and over on the main channel, and it was really talking about China's move to stable coins, kind of chasing what's happening here out in the West. And they're going to launch, well, they've already launched Hong Kong Legislative Council. They passed the whole, stablecoin ordinance, which is now law in Hong Kong. This takes effect August 1st, next week. Okay.
Nice.
So, and this is going to be kind of another new innovation hub for digital assets. Then you have China's strategic interests, which is also kind of correlated, but and we played some clips of this where the Chinese were talking about how this is going to be deployed. And then you have Standard Charter, key name here, Standard Charter, starting to play a leading role in this organization. So they did a joint venture with HKD, which is, one of the biggest ones out there in terms of where this could go. And that token is essentially designed to kind of go under Hong Kong's new rules. So again, more big deals. And then, of course, they have their whole sandbox thing going on. This could be huge because now you're talking about Asia. And Standard Charter, SBI, we'll just say Japan, China, two of the biggest commerce centers in Asia, also starting to look at this. So Standard Charter, big partner and investor of guess who?
Yeah. Ripple, long term, long time ago. Yeah. One of the first. Oh, sorry. One of the first ones. Sorry, one of the first public ones. I think Standard Charter. Sorry, just
Right.
my eye. Yeah, long time.
So if they go with blockchain, their payment-based trials, which is what they're talking about, Standard Charter, they've already tested Ripple. It's been done. What would be, I guess, if that were to happen, this, in my opinion, would speed it up quickly. In the essence of seeing a global infrastructure starting to rise, whether it's in the East or we find it happening in Europe, which I still am intrigued with Switzerland and France. So those are the three country areas that I'm watching very closely. Which one do you think is going to drop the domino first? Which area of the world?
I don't know because I don't know when it'll be ready.
Yeah.
I think it's coordinated. I'm a bit biased though. I have a bit biased opinion when in regards to how it's all gonna play out. I I I don't know, but what I do know is like the CBDCs are being built on on private ledgers of the XRP ledger. So we don't know where they're at with every project. I mean, they could be ready to go live on like 15 of them. We wouldn't know, in my opinion, because this is a private CBDC platform that's a carbon copy of the public XRP, which we can't see where they're at what stage they're at in deployment. And
Yeah.
my opinion, if this is since it's a private CBDC platform, that means they could be launching tokenized, like the stable coins could be ready to go. We wouldn't know because the stable coins are backed by the central bank digital currency. When
Right.
you look at the unified ledger diagrams and the filtering from the BIS, we see that you have that unified ledger in the middle, which to me is the XRP ledger. I think I proved that clearly in my videos. But around it are the central banks, and then further away is the commercial bank. So the central bank is always closer to that XRP ledger, and then the commercial bank. So you have the XRP ledger here, you have the central bank here, Hong Kong, Bank Canada, Bank US, whichever, and then further away, still connected to the central bank, is that commercial bank, which the tokenization is happening, right? Because the token assets, the stable coins have to be backed by central bank digital currency.
Right.
That's why in the diagram we're seeing the unified ledger, the commercial bank sits closer to the XRP ledger. They call it unified ledger, again, in my opinion. XRP ledger, definitely. And then
Mhm.
further on, the commercial bank. But the commercial bank, the stable coins are being backed by the central bank. And then
Well,
the so the
okay,
so I guess
so
my point, sorry, Paul, is that I think they're like, we don't know where they're at with each project because it's a private network, private CBDC network.
right.
So I don't know like who will launch first. I have no clue. Like
Interesting.
geopolitics is not my strength.
Well, and you think okay, so well, you have to think about geopolitics here because we've got some major confrontations going on between the East and the West, China, of course. But the one thing that links this is Standard Chart. And if you look at Standard Chart bridging Hong Kong's financial network, remember China, and Ripple's blockchain for fast enablement of whether it's stable coins, on and off ramps that could play into this. Now you've just connected Hong Kong, the gateway to China, and the United States, um, wh- which is huge. If China, the key here, I think, is going to be how China manages their digital asset policy going forward. Because if they use, because this is what they've done with Hong Kong in the past. Hong Kong has always been that testing ground. If you look at all the way back when the British took over Hong Kong to the evolution of its 100-year run, that was one of the tests for economic structure of trying to build in a free economy. Um, you tie this together with one of the major banks, which is Standard Chartered, and its relationship with Ripple, and it just seems like that could be maybe that is the catalyst that could cause this to move, is that kind of integration. Because it
Yeah,
would,
quite possible.
and you just think about where Garlinghouse has been over the last we're gonna have to start putting I don't know if he travels. I'm sure he travels private. We need to get his, tail number on that plane.
Yeah.
That will help me. So I've got a friend that tracks tail numbers right now,
Be
and
careful what you dig into.
now, right?
Yeah.
Tail number tracking, is interesting. I think they're trying to make it illegal
Yeah.
to where
Oh,
you could
definitely.
figure out where people are going.
Yeah.
But, definitely a lot happening right now. Remember these things, guys. You've got stablecoin legalizations and licensing, in Hong Kong. Standard Charters joined with HKD, remember that. And then, their early stage sandbox, alignment that they were involved in. So they were an early regulatory participant there. So it all starts to make sense. Back to your point, it's almost like they're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Just seemed like it's hiding in plain sight,
Yeah.
and it's just
Well,
oh,
yeah. No, 100%. Sorry, I wanted to say, like, to me, when I see them talking on stage and in seminars, they're literally describing Ripple's technology without saying Ripple. So, for example, the other day,
yeah,
they're talking about this guy, I won't mention his name, sitting on prominent stage with, other high up people in the industry, and he describes XRP to the T, but then he says, Bitcoin can act as that liquidity layer. I'm sorry, it's not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not that
yeah,
liquidity layer because we see him on another podcast where he's sitting next to Ripple and he says he's sitting next to Brad Garlinghouse, sorry, and he says, if we have somebody like Brad Garlinghouse and his company, it can help us a lot for liquidity.
yep.
But then when he's on stage elsewhere, he's talking about like Bitcoin being that liquidity layer, but what he describes is XRP. So what I mean is like we're the industry is not really understanding how big Ripple is because every time they're talking about Ripple, they never say Ripple. They'll mention maybe like Ethereum type or maybe we
Mhm.
like they never mention Ripple. Like anybody that's dug deep, like they will describe Ripple without saying Ripple every time, without saying XRP. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Well, and I think the things that, obviously we're going to try to uncover on this podcast, and we're going to do a lot more of these guys. We got a lot of people lined up for it. We're also going to start our spaces very soon where we'll get a chance to get a lot of voices in the area. I do want to cover a few things before we get out of here, Jesse. One, of course, is current price, because everybody's asking, we need price predictions. Right now, there's a couple of things that are happening. You've got some people that are going up to this $5 position right now after it's a little bit of adjustment. We saw it come back out of 3. The key thing, I think, is we're seeing a lot of catalysts that still push in this direction. What we're talking about here today, though, could be a significant catalyst that could push it into some kind of layers that we've seen other analysts predicting. I think it was Benzinga or Yahoo. No, it was there was a bullish prediction had by 2030 up to 26.97. Let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah, here it is. So by 26, up to $26 by 2030. So you can kind of see some of the potentials there on, the bullish prediction, average prediction, and the bearish prediction. Holding right now, obviously, it's blowing past the bearish prediction in 25. The average prediction, it's literally setting on top of. So bullish prediction, 25, I think, is still a little soft at 581. But I'm looking more toward this range in 2028 because there's some key things that could happen in 2028 around the financial ecosystem globally with the adoption of all these stable coins, because it's going to take at least through 2026 for the banks to truly be involved. And I think RLUSD may have a lot bigger play in the banking ecosystem than many people know. So we'll get more people on that. Jesse, it's been good having you on today. We're going to get you back on the show to dive a little bit deeper. It sounds like
please
it's going
do.
to be fun.
Please do. Like I said, Paul, I'm so honored that you had me. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your day. Appreciate Nicole reaching out. I really, really appreciate you having me. It's just an honor to be here.
You bet. So we're going to, guys, again, check out Jesse's channel. You can jump over to Apex Consulting over on YouTube. I'll just bring it up real quick.
Apex Crypto Consulting. Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Apex Crypto Consulting. Because there's another one that's just Apex Consulting, I believe, or Apex.
Right. Don't get lost in there. So help Jesse grow his channel, get the news out there when it comes to the XRP ecosystem. Obviously, thanks for everybody that's out there that promoted Jesse into the show, because basically we're letting the community determine how this podcast goes. Obviously, we want to vet everybody, but the point is that the community is giving us the ideas of who should be on the podcast, and we're going to continue that process. If it's not broke, we're not going to mess with it. So we'll continue that. Anyway, Jesse, thanks for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's such an honor. Thank you.
All right, you guys, make sure to subscribe. The audio podcast is a separate piece. The way this podcast gets dropped, you're going to find it on X first. It'll drop there, and then the audio version will drop into Spotify, Apple, and all the traditional audio podcast slots. So make sure and subscribe out there on those. When you find it on the audio side, spread it over on X, and I'll catch you next time right here on the XRP podcast. Take care. See you, folks.
I kinda adore you, but don't get too proud. You're like my favorite snack, I won't say it out loud. I won't say you're perfect.